Alrighty, everybody. Oh, that was a quick. You were green for a second there, Mr. Farnham, and muted. Nope.
Yep, the green screen didn't light up.
I know. I love it. You've made two mistakes, which means, can you imagine the superiority I feel over you right now?
I just assumed it was that way every day.
Well, give me my 5 seconds as well. So everybody got a mention today in the soliloquy, from Jan to Janice's iPad to multiple Steves. Look, this is how I get everybody now to come to the after show, is just mention their names, except for Joey, who's now. Did I mention Joey? Oh, I did mention Joey. Anyway, I have a feeling that I'm not going to need to say a lot, because I know that Bob and Jan and Tom are going to be chomping at the bit. So, take it away. Or Steve, quite frankly, editing tweets. So go for it. Ian Schaefer's here.
Okay, I'll jump in first. I was trying to back off today and let somebody else jump in first, but you give me like half a second. I'm going to jump in first.
Like you're like a piranha.
My notes today are ample and full, all kinds of exciting stuff. One thing I wanted to ask you about is, how did you get the idea for Kindred? How did you make this jump in your own adventure? How did you see that this was needed now?
Yeah, so it was there were two things. So one was running an ad agency and working with clients, and really getting, because we were we were more involved than just like a creative agency, right? We were usually like trusted business partners, like helping a lot of our clients with their digital transformation journey. So it went beyond just the communications part of it and more into infrastructure, organizational psychology, things like that. And it was becoming incredibly obvious, the chasm that existed between the things that they say they did and the things that they actually do. There were points at which we fired clients over principle in some cases for that. For example, talking about the preservation of water supplies while simultaneously, producing a significant percentage of the world's single-use plastics, right? It's like you can't reconcile those two things, and one, it's probably sleight of hand, if anything, right? And so there could be a positive, but if that's counterbalanced with a huge net negative, then what good is the positive, I guess? Yeah. So there was a lot of that cognitive dissonance that was forming. That was quite obvious to me. Another defining event was 2015. In 2015, the unrest in Ferguson as a result of the killing of Michael Brown. Yeah. I was very proud of the diversity of my agency in throughout all the ranks of that agency, and had some very serious conversations with teammates who were people of color, and more specifically Black, and talking about their lived experience and where they went home to, for example, at night, and what they saw on that path there versus some other folks who worked at the agency who were basically like walking home to Gramercy Park. And it's just kind of like a very different experience that people are having when you're building, a company that is designed to be enough of a reflection of culture that it can create it, or weave it. The difference in lived experience that was not actually being communicated with each other was jarring to me. So I actually brought in consultants to help bridge those gaps, in terms of conversations, and I learned a lot through that experience too. And then ultimately seeing that the evolution of business to respect the evolution of society, that in some cases was being accelerated through information and the pop culturization of politics, race, gender identity, all of those things, told me that it was going to be impossible to keep those out of business culture, right? And so we just as likely to be talking about something that Trump tweeted as we are about that last night's episode of Mad Men. And so the water cooler was not immune to, conversations about politics. So anyway, all of those things were kind of coming together and made me realize that something needed to be done to accelerate the rate of change that businesses need to go through, because not enough of them or maybe most of them are not capable of being B Corps, right, to change the decision-making filter that they have. And so, other than change it for them, what is it that we could do that would have the most scalable effect? And I was also frustrated as an agency with not being able to do things at scale, where every ounce of effort was tied to an hour or so of an employee's time. And so I really wanted to figure out how to scale this kind of business change. And that was essentially the plan for Kindred, right? Catalyze the conversation by launching, a more inclusive Davos, right? Where the people actually in the room are the people who are part of the solution, as opposed to the majority of them who are part of the problem. And then kind of building a platform for, decision makers to get smarter about those decisions.
What fascinated me during the show, Jan asked a question in the chat about banks, and sort of this more conscious approach to business. I wondered if, to broaden that question, do you see a differential across industries at this point with respect to that kind of disconnect problem, or is it pretty much to be found in every industry? And if it's very common these days to see a disconnect between how people are talking publicly and how they're actually acting, have you located yet what the most common causes are of that disconnect?
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about banks first. One of the most fascinating things about banks is that all of the fintech, financial tech startups that have popped up in the last 5 to 10 years have all had to pivot into becoming banks. Yeah. So that means lots of new entrepreneurial takes on what it means to be a bank, right? So SoFi is a bank now. SoFi used to just be a student lender. Now they're a full-blown bank, and all of these new banks entering into a very crowded sector have to differentiate themselves somehow. And a lot of the younger banks, who, by the way, several of them are members of Kindred, like Aspiration Bank is one, Dave is another bank. Imagine radically rethinking what it means to be a bank by just giving it a first name, right? But you also have Wells Fargo, who's also a member, right? And that's talk about baby, I've changed. They've had to say that many times over now for lots of different reasons, but they have committed to going on this journey. And I think that's that is what's now happening. The competition is driving the change, maybe more so than magically developing a conscience could ever do. Yeah. And I think that's happening across every industry as new entrants kind of come in. And I can't think of an industry right now where there aren't new entrants coming into, and that's forcing a lot of these companies to either change their thinking or retrench themselves in the old way of thinking and say that's going to be their differential.
Right, and if they don't, they will be left behind. I mean, you look at disintermediation and disruption that happens, but more importantly, when you look at, I suppose we've seen some of that with the airlines, but this is on a much deeper level. I've been very impressed with some of the stuff from Aspiration. Yeah. It's revolutionary, but for us, it's more like common sense. The other thing I just wanted to make a note of, it's what I love about what you're putting together is, as the old saying goes, which I say often, my wife says I say this way too often, it's one of my favorite quotes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And I think what people are realizing is that collaboration has never really been the order of the day at an executive level. But the more people can collaborate and open themselves up just a little bit, the more likely they are to be part of that, to use your analogy, the peloton, right? That gets them from here to there, where here is status quo and built to suck, right? And there is thrival or growth or reinvention or whatever you want to call it.
The kind of all the banks are, for example, are on this journey together, right? They know what they're all dealing with. So, when BlackRock says that they're going to divest from fossil fuels, you're damn straight that the other banks like even like Citi, right, has to start thinking the same way. It gives them license to think that same way. And sometimes like one of the things that prevent you from making a decision is the feeling that you're on that decision journey alone. Like you need someone to validate that decision for you, or like your boss might need someone to validate decisions saying, look, they're doing it. Now we have to do it. And I think that's part of the effect too. I think we're building that layer of competition as well inside of the network, which I think is very healthy, right?
Well,
it's like, I'm not saying like groupthink. I'm just saying like someone who can take that brave first step makes it less brave for everyone else.
You seem to be mentioning a lot of banks and different types, but you seem to deliberately leave out credit unions.
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
I would say that credit unions are super interesting to me because they are technically there for the employees, which I think in and of themselves gives them a stakeholder value that I think lots of other banks don't have. So I think just by definition, they're probably more value aligned with their customers than the traditional banks. I think there's a lot more work to do with the traditional banks than the credit unions, or even like some regional banks who understand that small business is in fact their bread and butter. So therefore have to work more like hand in hand with the community. There are just fewer regional banks now because they've kind of gotten sucked up by like Capital One and whomever. But we have regional bank members too. We don't have a credit union member necessarily, but I think that's just because of how early it is. But I'm given the choice between doing my business, to be honest, personal business, with a commercial bank or credit union, I probably opt for credit union. But I think that just by nature, they are more aligned with their stakeholders and may have less work to do in that area. But I would argue that, they're probably almost certainly not perfect when it comes to lots of other areas that they need to focus on, just like everybody else does. Like, again, like the diversity of their leadership, or, where their investments are going, or where now you're seeing this hit the venture capital community, because some of the leading sources of money to the venture capital community are actually union funds, pension funds. And the pension funds are now, developing a sense of principle. I said, we don't want our money to go to gun manufacturers or anyone who participates in that economy. We don't want our money being invested in fossil fuels anymore. Now, some of that is just pure business sense, right? Like investing in fossil fuels now is seen as like a risky move, as opposed to the safe place to put your money, a few years ago. But even with less upside than ever. But it's just, I think that's, again, like part of where the evolution of this is going. I don't want to get caught up on banks and money because there are a lot more companies than that. But like I put it this way, I was surprised to see as much demand from banks to go on this journey with us than anything else.
It's interesting what you say, Ian, because I'm a philosopher, and I just recently had my first foray into the credit union world with a big credit union down in Texas, in San Antonio. And I found exactly what you're talking about. They were already so kind of purpose-driven, sensitive to sort of the humane issues and values. They asked me to give 3 talks for their top executive team, which was about 250 people. And I was amazed at how receptive they were to the kind of stuff I do. And I've been friends with John Mackey for about 10 years now, and so heard from him from the very beginning about what he was trying to do to support, a broader sense of mission for business in the world. Would it benefit you guys to have a credit union kind of join up in what you're doing?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll pass on the word to this.
We're talking to like other similar areas too, like USAA, for example. Like you talk to somebody from USAA, speaking of Texas or San Antonio.
Yeah.
It's unlike talking to anyone who works at any other company.
Yeah.
Like it's like the Kool-Aid, it's like so fully drank, but it's like like genuinely inspiring.
Yeah.
Like they really do understand what they're for, and it comes all the way through into like the commercial messages that you see on TV, right? So, those are the kinds of companies that I think still have like a ways to go. Just again, in general, like it's a journey, just like anything else. But they also bring to it, a perspective that I think would like the rest of the membership would benefit from hearing from.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's like, that's what it's all about.
Good. Well, I'll talk to my CEO friend down there in Texas and tell him about what you're doing. I'm sure he'll be interested.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
It's one of the cool things I love about this after show is our ability to do the brainstorming. When I think about the brain trust that's in this space, and just the life experiences, business experiences, and the ability to connect so quickly and easily, it's just great. So
yeah,
as usual, thanks Joseph for hosting this platform and making it work so smoothly.
I didn't do anything. Ian did all the work. He's
well.
I feel bad. I was like, well, first of all, I think this might have been a record. This might have been the longest. The interviews are getting longer and longer, and it's fine because I actually, I built the show around the idea of being more Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan, Howard Stern style, longer. Not feeling like the answer needs to be quicker, like get to the point quickly, like we got to take a commercial break. And yet everything in video says shorter is better.
Yeah, but what I think you have going for you is by extending the format and making the conversations so much richer, your ability to segment that broadcast into modules that are really what I was looking for. And being able to share that kind of information with people. Hey, I see you're talking about widgets. I had a conversation with the Widget King, and here's why I think it would be something you might be interested in. Bang. They don't have to sit through the hour and a half show.
I mean, that's definitely part of the, I might have to go to the same people you went to raise some money there, Ian, which is to like have a social media team that can actually break up the content and tag it and classify it and do stuff with it. But yeah, I mean, that's
YouTube will reward you.
That's phase
for
two.
real,
Well,
right?
That's phase 2, no doubt. So how about anyone else want to ask a question of Mr. Schaefer? I mean, by the way, I found like everything kind of was interconnected. This idea of playbooks and rules and guidelines, whether it's better use of Twitter for civil, discourse and civility in general, or even just companies. I think it was Jeremy Tucker, actually, who's the CMO of Planet Fitness. He said that they have, that companies need multiple playbooks. Right. So they need a playbook for when things are good. They need their plan B playbook, right? Yeah. To your point, Ian. And we just need guidelines, better guidelines and rubrics to gauge, because, when you talk about accountability and also how we're doing, right? That Ed Koch quote, based on which metric, right? Based on which benchmark, based on whose opinion, hopefully not the stock price as far as Wall Street's concerned, because clearly that's just one determinant. So
that always goes up anyway, right?
Yeah. And that's why I said, like, even going back to that discussion, fascinating discussion just on what's happening with movies and releases, and it's crazy. Like I honestly still feel like there should have been a tip jar. I didn't even say this, but I watched Wonder Woman with my son, and honestly, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, and I didn't hate it. And I kind of felt like everyone that's hating on it, I almost like want to rage against them, basically, just to say, like, how entitled are you to complain about and lambaste this movie when you essentially got it for free, and why not just, I mean, it's your point, Ian, which is people don't go to the movies. It was a brilliant statement that I think needs to be emphasized. People don't go to the movies to see the movie. They go to the movies to go to the movies.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we're not going to have that. But I cannot wait to see Coming America 2. It kind of hits differently when you're saying, like, I can't wait to see Coming to America 2 on Amazon Prime Video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. By the way, I make a mean popcorn. I can send some over.
I'm lucky I got it before the rush, but like I have I bought like a movie theater popcorn machine.
That's a good idea, actually.
It's like, I don't know, like I watch a lot. I have kids, and so it's hard to get out to the movies. So I had already committed to, like, a couple of years ago, just saying, I'm gonna just watch a lot of stuff at home. But it it is different. And I
To
think
your
that's,
point, I
you
mean,
say the new normal, that might be it.
I've heard plenty of people say, let's go to the movies tonight. And then the other person say, yeah, find out what's on.
Right.
You know,
Oh,
so
interesting.
exactly, it was the experience that was sought rather than a particular film.
So one of the, it's different now because of the amount of competition out there, but for literally the longest time, the thing about movie marketing is not how do we get people to see this film? It's how do we get people who are already going to the movies to see our film?
Right.
Because there's no film that can magically get people. I mean, it's rare that can magically get people to the theater that just don't go see movies. There's a huge number of people that don't go see movies. You know, so, but for the people who do, you want as large a number of that share as possible. Yeah. And I think that's, you know, we're not marketing movies. We're marketing, again, like, it's like, we're not telling you to go to Walmart. We're telling you to buy the thing on the shelf when you get there. And that was like one of the first things that I learned when I went to work for a movie studio. The second was how not to treat other human beings. But that was just
another story. That's another
next show.
Ian, and I forget, I think it was someone last week on the show speaking, you know, to Bob's point about modularizing these best practices. But I actually realize I want to write a soliloquy about it. The story of the movies, specifically cinema, going to the movies, is almost a beautiful and you know, beautiful, chaotic, ugly, harrowing microcosm for business in general, which is what they all did was their plan B was bigger seats, flatter seats, put alcohol in. Their eyes were on the wrong prize. And what they did was to try and figure out ways to get people to come to the movies and spend more money there. And what they didn't see was this big giant, you know, meteor approaching them that is called COVID, but it could have been called something else. It could have been.
The irony is that they were like, let's make going to the movies feel more like staying at home.
Oh,
yeah, perfect. I mean, perfect articulation. Exactly. Exactly.
So now
they got their wish.
So
they got their wish, right? Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, it's a problem. I think it will be figured out, but not, as with most things, not at the scale that it was. I mean, I think we all knew, like, kind of in the 80s and 90s, when all of these multiplexes were going up everywhere. Like, how is this sustainable?
Yeah, really.
It's a giant bubble. And it's like, because they are effectively like the MPAA, and there's so few theater owners, like fewer independent theater owners than ever. It's mostly like AMC, Clearview, like companies like that. These companies, they cannot exist at the same size as an industry as they were. And you already saw how many ads they were cramming in, right, to a film, like before the trailers, you know, as they were. And you're already starting to get the feeling that the Emperor doesn't have any clothes there.
The big multiplex here in Boston on Route 1 in Saugus is being torn down, and they're making it an Amazon distribution center.
Wow, that says it all right there. You can get your 72-inch widescreen TV delivered within an hour by a drone.
Think about
very big drone.
I saw this today. I saw this morning. Feel free to go get this while it's on sale. But Best Buy has a 65-inch Vizio OLED 4K television for like $580.
Yeah.
Goodness.
That's how many movies is that?
Yeah, and right? You know, the reality is also keep in mind that when you hold your phone at arm's length, it would cover a movie screen in perspective. You know what I mean? So, so how big your TV is determined also by how far back you sit from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I know people I had a theater in my basement for my two sons and I to go watch Star Wars movies. And so they could have friends over, and we had chairs set up, the whole 9 yards. The front row, of course, was for us with the reclining chairs. We were ahead of our time, but, and that wasn't that big of a TV. It was probably a 64-inch, but it was, thousands of dollars.
I think if there's one like silver lining that theater owners can take away from this whole experience is that, one of the behaviors that people did do or learn was the opposite, right? How to recreate the theater experience at home, to your point, right? And a lot of people did this with outdoor projectors.
Yep.
And but it wasn't because of the movie. It almost didn't matter. That's the point. It almost didn't matter what movie like you were putting up there. It was the fact that you were delivering a communal social experience, which was so scarce that, that I think they're like, people do like still recognize the value of it. I just think it's going to be differently this time around.
The local drive-in theaters here in Vermont were closing down over the last several years. And last summer, a number of them reopened and invested in speaker technology that, would work through the radios and all that. And huge success for drive-in theaters. Now they're using the drive-in theater format for bands to play.
Totally.
Yeah, right.
You're kind of anchored in your 6-foot safe bubble. So it is, I think we'll just swing the pendulum the other way and figure out some sort of a hybrid of old and new. I think the same issue with publishing. Think about books. Books are really important. Oh, I should have had a really good one here at my fingertips. But Tom, hold up a book for me. However, they have transformed now to, there we go.
Oh, he holds up one of his. Isn't that a coincidence there?
Here, I'll hold up mine.
Hold on.
You guys.
Well, there's Lisa Cohn's. Listen, I'm just holding whatever I can see. I
got RGA's book.
That's a classic one.
How about that?
I got to keep up with Joseph now.
How about this? This is going to be New Year's Streaming Eve. And by the way, the first guest to sign up for it is Peter Rourke. How about that? Dog is my co-pilot, is going to be hanging out with me on New Year's Streaming Eve.
Let's
cool.
See
Ian's.
Yeah, that's good.
It's the 1990-1991 Knicks yearbook. Look at the pristine condition.
Oh man,
with the Reebok pump ad on.
All right, guys. I
gotta go too.
I have to go and pick up my son from the airport, which is going to be interesting.
And I had a screaming question I didn't get a chance to ask.
Oh,
I'll ask it quickly. You got 1 minute.
Best experience I ever had watching a movie was in a guy's house at his home theater 15 years ago. It was when the Thomas Crown Affair had just come out and had gone on to video. And I was able to sit in this guy's home screening room with the cinematographer of the Thomas Crown Affair. And he would go like this. He was sitting right next to me and he would go like this, pause it. And they would pause it. He said, let me tell you what was going on behind the scenes right now. Renee Zellweger was doing, and I thought if streaming had something like that available for home, your home use, so you could pause it anytime, and they've got the cinematographer talking about what, Pierce Brosnan was really doing when this scene was being filmed or that kind of thing. It would make
we that's what this show is.
Thank you very much. Streaming has it. It's called The After Show.
Yeah.
And you know what? And the difference is the cinematographer, which is in my case myself, I can just mute Tom at any point in time.
That's true. That's
works both ways. All right.
By the way,
guys,
if you want to see the future of that,
yeah,
just look at what the NBA is. Look closely at what the NBA is doing.
Oh,
within the next year, you're going to have basically like 5 different feeds for every game.
Oh,
it's going to be incredible.
Very interesting.
Tom, I have one thing to tell you that at CES a number of years ago, I signed up for a site that did that, and they had movies online, and the movie that I watched with that, directors talking about each thing, you could pause it and they'd have like pop-up bubbles and things, was Blade Runner.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Really, cool. I had to go look that up and see what that was. I don't think it's around anymore, but it was really good. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
All right, Ian, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you guys.